What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the RabidMining YouTube channel, and I'm pretty excited for this build because we have the brand new RYZEN 7950X. So this is a pretty expensive build just for a CPU mining rig because it is all new gen. It has a new socket, unlike the 3 and 5000 series AM4. This is running on AM5 and an LGA socket. So that means you need a brand new motherboard, brand new DDR5 RAM, and all of it is brand new tech, so nothing is cheap at this point. Also, and the latest motherboards are the X670s, so it is the highest power usage in the motherboards. Next month, the X650s, or I believe it's the B650s, should be released, and at that point, we should see a little lower power consumption, at least coming out of the motherboard. But for this, I justified this build because after I do a bunch of CPU mining tests on this, we will be putting this in as my new workstation. So let's roll through our parts list. Obviously, first up, we got our RYZEN 7950X CPU. This does have a 5.7 gigahertz boost clock and a 4.5 gigahertz base clock, which is pretty insane thinking about it, as the Ryzen 3 and 5000 series is 3.7 and 3.6 gigahertz on that base clock. So if we can get this thing around 4.5 at 1 volt or less, that could be pretty insane in terms of efficiencies. But again, we won't know how this plays out until we actually get this together and do some testing on it. As for RAM here, I got some Kingston Beast DDR5. Now this does say AMD RAM on it, not Intel directly. So I am actually kind of surprised there. I was expecting Intel RAM only, and I thought we'd have to wait quite a bit until we actually do see AMD. But it looks like this supports both. So maybe we'll get lucky here, because I do remember when the 3000 series first dropped, the Gigabyte motherboards did not really want to boot too well. It took like 10 boots, and then finally it would post. So it'll be very interesting once we get this thing together here. This is CL36, and it's about 6,000 megahertz. Now the latency on this RAM is about 12.5 seconds. It's a little looser than what we're used to with CL14, but we'll see what happens with that increased speed of the megahertz here. For the motherboard, I am rolling with an X670E Aurorus Master. Now, this is about your mid-range X670. I believe the low end is the Elite, and then there's one more higher that I can't remember the name. But it's kind of cool what these new boxes look like. Everything's all kind of, you know, cross-colored here and luminescent. It's pretty sweet. Hopefully it's showing up in the video, but in real life, you know, this box is looking pretty cool. And when I was picking this thing up, this thing does have quite a bit of weight. These are pretty heavy motherboards. For the power supply, I'm going to be utilizing the Dark Power Pro 12. This is a 1200 watt power supply from Be Quiet, and it's titanium rated. Be Quiet actually did send me this PSU out a couple months back, and I just haven't had time to get to it yet, but we finally get to utilize this power supply. And I will be putting this into my workstation as its main power supply once we do finish our tests and everything. And I'll probably line this 7950X up with something like my 3090, and then it'll be an ultimate rendering machine, gaming PC, and everything all in one once we get our mining tests complete with it. And then for the cooler, it is another Be Quiet product. It is the Dark Rock Pro 4, which is a 250 watt TDP cooler, and it's supposed to be just under an NHD 15, which is pretty much the king of air cooling. So we'll see what happens and if this thing can tame the beast. But for CPU mining type of perspective here, I don't expect this thing to really run that hot. A lot of reports in terms of gaming and overclock is around 95C. So again, we won't know what'll happen till we get this thing on there, but these are our part lists so far for this CPU mining rig later on workstation. So I was going to skip everything that was in this motherboard box, but I feel like I had to say something here. So I opened this up. Everything looks pretty sweet. We have all these stickers and stuff here. These are some nice sweet stickers. Let's have a quick peek here so you can kind of see all this stuff here. Nice stuff regardless. We come up, we got our nice packaging. Underneath here we have all our, you know, everything's nice and neat, all our wires and cables and everything needed. And then this here is what really surprised me. So this is our manual book. It's pretty much nothing. A couple pages here pretty much says if you want specs or something, go to our website and look it up. Why did they have all this nice stuff and they really cheap out on the book? And, you know, I'm used to stuff like this. Like, we got an X470 from MSI. Here's last gen X570 from Gigabyte. Aurorus right here, the Elite. And all of a sudden now we go from this nice books to this piece of garbage. So I just wanted to point this part out to you guys because I thought it was kind of funny how everything is so nice, the box, everything, and then you get this piece of crap type of instruction manual here. And I always recommend read the instruction manual. You may have built hundreds of PCs, computers, CPU mining rigs, whatever. But if you try a new motherboard or an upgraded one or something, I always recommend read the manual, because you never know if they change something with the RAM slots, which ones are single, which ones are double channel, and so on. So I always recommend it. I do every time I look at a new motherboard, I check out the manual to see if anything has changed in the selection of where each module goes and everything. So be sure to always do that, guys. One thing I should also point out, because this is the middle tier Aurorus Master, this is PCI Gen 5 ready in the graphics and NVMe only. So the lower end of the X670s, it will only be PCI 5 in the graphics or PCI Express times 16, and none of your M2s or NVMEs. And then the mid tier, like you see here, it's got these two, and then the high end will probably be PCI Express 5 across everything that it does support on the motherboard. So I just want to point out the middle tier here is your graphics and NVMe and not everything else. And then the lower tier will only be for your graphics PCI Express 16 slot. Okay, so we're going to pull the CPU out, but this is a kind of a cool case. Look at this. Just pops out, and then it's like a magnet right here. Just keeps popping. But here is the CPU for a look, and look at that. Thing looks sweet. It's nice to finally see something look a bit different. A nice change up for once. So once I get the CPU installed, we are then going to have to remove the default AM4. That's correct. These are like AM4 install brackets here because it does work with AM4 coolers. We don't need anything new there. So if you have a bunch of extra coolers kicking around, they will work with the AM5 sockets, the LGAs here. So we're going to get this CPU installed, and then I'm going to remove these brackets. Been a while since I messed around with Intel, but I pretty much feel that's what's going on here. You know, we do have this cover now. You remember to remove this cover before you actually push down on your CPU, or you will wreck some pins or something. So here is the new 7000 series AM5 CPUs, and here you can see there's an arrow. This does line up. It has it on both sides, and there's no longer pins on the CPU itself. It is now within the motherboard that you would usually see with an Intel CPU. There's also these little indents here, these grooves coming out, and the top left that the arrow does have to match up when looking at your motherboard straight on. Now these little grooves here will match up with these little slots on the chip like so. So that way you don't mess anything up, almost like putting in RAM in backwards or sideways or something. You got to make sure your chip, one side is longer and the other side is shorter. So just some things to keep an eye out before you actually put this in, lock it in, and potentially bend a pin within your motherboard, because that would be an expensive mistake. So I do have the CPU in there now. I like to give it a little shake just to make sure all the pins are in the little grooves. It feels nice and snug, so that's good. I wish we didn't need a cooler. I wish they were like self-cooling or something, because this thing would look sweet with just the CPU showing. But we can't do that, so let's close this thing up. All right, CPU is installed. We're all locked in with our little arm there. Now I got to remove these default brackets and get our Be Quiet cooler brackets installed on this thing. So you can see I did go online to look at their manual because the one they send is garbage. And for dual channel RAM with this particular motherboard, the Gigabytes, it is on A2 and B2, which is going from the CPU itself, the second one, and the last one. So this is A1, A2, B1, and B2. So we're going to utilize the second one and the fourth slot for dual channel configuration. Now I'm going to put my RAM in now just so we don't run into any issues with the cooler later on. Now I imagine this has plenty of clearance, but I just like to do it that way just in case, because you never know, especially once you apply a thermal paste, then you got to take it off, wipe it all down, and then do it all over again, put in your RAM, and then install the cooler. So I'm just going to bypass that whole mishap in case it does run into that issue and get our RAM in here. So DDR5 RAM, it does look like the slot is a lot more centered compared to DDR3 and DDR4. But it is still slightly off center. There is a slightly longer side, only by like 2 or 3 pins. So I'm going to show you, and a quick and easy way to know which way your RAM goes is simply always point your label of your RAM facing outwards away from the CPU. So I'm going to show you right now, right quick. So you can see right now it is lined up and will snap in fine. Now I'm going to flip it the other way and you will see that there is a slight offset on this RAM. Okay, now that it's flipped the wrong way, the label is actually going, or the face towards the CPU. You can see here that there is a little gap. Now the middle section is going into about the 2nd or 3rd pin and it's offset. So you may think it's in place and snap it down, but if you do that, you will ruin your RAM by potentially damaging one of them pins. RAM is all in, snapped in, everything's looking good. Before I get the cooler in, I'm probably going to peel off some of this plastic because we may not be able to get at it. Now, is there any here? Nope, but there is one right here. We should be fine at that one. Looks like there's actually another one here. I don't know how hot all this stuff's going to get, so it may melt plastic, but we'll see what happens later on. Best to get this all out, and I can't get at this one. I have no nails. What the heck? All right, so I did end up conquering the beast. Now we need some thermal paste, and I ran out of Noctua, so I do have some of this MX4 that I picked up from Memory Express, so hopefully it does the job. And I'm not entirely sure where the chips are on this CPU. I think there's 2, one up here and one up here, and something else down here. So I'm gonna attempt vertical line down the middle this way, I think, and if it keeps it cool, it keeps it cool. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I feel I'll get more spread going this way than I would this way, but we'll see what happens. All right, so I laid that turd right across there vertically, and hopefully it doesn't kind of fall down in there or there. I don't know, I'm kind of worried about that, but you know what? Let's see if this works, and hopefully she stays cool. Okay, so I got the cooler in, and I am glad I put that RAM in first, because look at that clearance. I never would have got that RAM in. Actually, I may be able to, you know, squeeze it through there. Maybe I should take it out and give it a test run and see. But overall, it is pretty tight. It may be able to fit in there sliding straight sideways, but I'm glad I did it before I put in this cooler, because it probably would have been a little more on the difficult side. Okay, everything is pretty much ready. Fans are installed onto that cooler there. And now we just got to get power and everything here. Now this is a beast of a power supply. Like, it uses a C19 plug to your NEMA standard 3-prong here, 1200 watt. Usually you don't see these plug ends until about 1500 watts or higher, but they're actually putting this thing into this Be Quiet 1200 watt. And you can see on the back here, we got, I don't know, stuff for drives. We got our motherboard, P8, PCI Expresses, and all sorts of crazy plugs, and something to do with overclocking there. And yeah, so this power supply has a lot of features going on with it. All right, so I do want to point something out. The PCI Express coming out of this power supply is actually 12-pin plugs going into the power supply here, and you can see how many there are there. There's 12, and this has 5 PCI Express connectors coming off of it and 2 CPU connectors. Now I'm using them both because this motherboard actually has 2 8-pin connectors right there, and I do got them both plugged in. It's kind of dark, hopefully you can see, but I'm using them both just in case. I imagine we could get away with one, but I'm going to use both just to be on the safe side here. Okay guys, I think I am finally ready to fire this up, and hopefully it posts or does something. I got my capture card ready. Now if you're unfamiliar, unlike other Ryzen CPUs except the 5700G, these are supposed to have integrated graphics. So I have my HDMI cable plugged into the motherboard here. I got this on. It looks like there's a power button on it, so you don't need an external power remote switch. So I'm about to hit the power and see if we light a fire or something. So wish me luck. 3, 2, 1, push. Okay, things are spinning. We got ignition. So far on a boot up process, we're looking at 48, 49 watts. Not too bad. No GPU installed. Hopefully it detects our RAM and everything is good. Okay guys, so it only took about 10 seconds and it did detect this system. It booted, so great. We're on some progress here. Okay, so I am in the BIOS here. Everything is looking good. We're hanging out at about 4.5 gigahertz on default here, so that's pretty crazy. RAM is in A2 and B2. That's exactly what we needed. I'm gonna go to some advanced settings, load optimize. No, cancel that. That's the wrong button. Advanced. Oh, advanced is different. Usually it's F7. It's F2 in this case. So what all do we got here? So we got DDR5 auto booster, auto. Okay, turbo boost feature, gotcha. Extreme memory profile, Expo. That's a little new name here. Expo 1, Expo 2. So that must be a DDR5 or an AMD thing. So we got two profiles to choose from. Currently we're disabled. We're not cranking anything up yet. I'm going to roll everything at default settings here. We're going to see if HiveOS works. Now, allegedly, HiveOS does not support the 7000 series yet, so we have to wait for an update. But I'm going to try it anyway, see if anything's detected. If not, I do have a hard drive with Windows, and then we'll run into that. So I'm just going to hit F10 here, and we'll see if this thing does boot up or not within HiveOS. Okay, it's doing its thing. It's detected. It's on an SSD, so it should be fairly fast, hopefully. But yeah, it's going in, yada, yada, target Bluetooth, Hive, yup. So this will be, what is this, failed? Oh, never mind, I failed. I did not plug in the Ethernet cable. Give me a second. Okay, so far we are detected. We got a 32 AMD Ryzen 9 7950X 16-core processor. You can see there's a gigabyte GPU here. Now, this is an onboard graphics. Maybe some other time we can initiate some dual mining and potentially put the integrated graphics to work within HiveOS. Again, I don't know. We'll find out sometime later on. But yes, so everything booted up. Everything is running. It, booted up fairly fast and good. I got to do some testing on the XMP profiles, or I guess an EXO or whatever it's called now, to see if it'll boot with that, because that seems to be the issues when you're trying to overclock that RAM and whatnot. But yeah, crazy stuff. Everything is looking good. So far, it is booting, working, and doing what it's supposed to. But how does it mine? That is the question. Okay, so Expo 1 did work and booted right up, and we're at DDR5 6000. We can see here we're at 6030.6 megahertz. Now, Expo 2, it did not work. It kind of went, did its own thing for like 3-4 minutes. The fan shut off, and then it rebooted and came in, said start in safe mode and stuff. So Expo 2 does not seem to want to work. Maybe with a BIOS upgrade or something. We'll work on that some other time. But Expo 1 did work. So this is like installing your XMP profile. Now, usually with CPU mining, this means using more power, and it's not really needed. But regardless, it does at least use Expo 1. So system idle here at about 6000 megahertz on the first setting of the XMP or Expo, whatever it's called. The Expo 2 did not want to boot, but Expo 1 did at 6000. I am just on default settings with the CPU. No type of overclocking or anything, and we're hanging out at about 100. Whoa, it spiked to 143 there, but mostly around the 104 to 110 range on the idle. So I just pointed this at XMR to see if it starts getting some hash rates here, and we're gonna have a quick peek. Holy shit.